You didn't come into this world doubting yourself. That feeling that whispers you are not enough wasn't born in you. It was planted, not in a moment, but gradually. Through small gestures, loaded silences, and subtle expectations, you were taught to look at yourself not as a miracle, but as a problem to solve. Let us begin with a simple truth. Self-hatred is learned. It is absorbed like smoke in a room until you no longer notice its presence, only the difficulty to breathe. What if the pain you carry isn't yours? What if the shame that tethers you like a shadow isn't truth, but tradition? We must ask, who benefits when you believe you are unworthy? And perhaps more importantly, who do you become when you stop believing it? This video is not here to comfort you. It is here to confront you, to dismantle the lie that has shaped your inner world. Let's start with shame. Not the brief discomfort that nudges you when you cross someone's boundaries. That's healthy. But the chronic, lingering shame that rewrites your story. The kind that doesn't say, "I made a mistake," but "I am a mistake." That shame isn't yours. It was engineered by culture, by systems that require your compliance, because a person who doubts themselves is easier to govern, to market to silence. This shame is not random. It has architecture, it has ritual, and perhaps most dangerously, it has inheritance, passed down through generations, through ideologies, religions, and institutions that needed to keep you small. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's social conditioning, and it begins early. Children learn quickly that love can be conditional, that smiles come with strings, that the price of acceptance is obedience. And so begins the construction of the false self. To be accepted, you adjusted. You became palatable. You erased the parts of yourself that were too loud, too curious, too emotional. You censored your joy, muted your desires, softened your truth, and it worked. People liked you. You were praised for your politeness, for being easy to handle, easy to forget. But with every compliment for your conformity, something inside you dimmed. You became a stranger to your own aliveness. What did it cost? Everything. The false self is a survival strategy, not a life strategy. It helps you endure, not flourish. It shields you from rejection, but also from connection. And over time, the mask doesn't come off. It fuses. You don't just play a role, you become it. And deep inside, the real you waits, not silently, but restlessly. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche called this dynamic out with brutal clarity. For him, modern morality, especially that born of religious guilt, was not a force for good, but a mechanism of control. He called it slave morality, a system born from resentment, designed by those who could not express their power, and instead glorified obedience and self-denial. Under this morality, instincts were demonized. Joy became vanity, desire became sin, power became pride, and the human being became divided against itself. You were taught to be good. Nietzsche wanted you to be whole. Wholeness is messy. It includes your anger, your appetite, your chaos. And that's the point. A sanitized self is a dead self. But what happens when you reject the lie? When you stop performing? When you strip away the masks and risk being seen? That is the beginning of a new life. And that path is not paved with ease. It is paved with courage. Psychologist John Bradshaw, decades after Nietzsche, gave the same condition a therapeutic name: toxic shame. He described it not as an emotion, but as an identity, a way of being. Shame not as a feeling that passes, but as the lens through which you view your entire self. And when that shame is absorbed in childhood, it becomes the bedrock of your personality. You begin to build a self, not around your truth, but around your fear of rejection. You become what others need. You forget what you need. This is the soul wound. And its hallmark symptom? Disconnection. Disconnection from your emotions, from your body, from your own desires. Have you ever smiled while feeling empty, laughed when you wanted to cry, said yes while your entire being screamed no? That is the false self at work. That is toxic shame's silent puppeteer. And the tragedy is not just that you perform, it's that you begin to believe the performance is who you are. Here's what Bradshaw made clear. This isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to heal, because no one else can. Healing begins with recognition. You cannot dismantle what you deny exists. You must be willing to name the wound. But naming is not enough. You must feel it, all of it. The rage, the sorrow, the longing. You must descend into the basement of your psyche, where the wounded self still hides, not to shame them, but to hold them. That child inside you does not need fixing. They need presence. They need to be seen, to be heard, to be loved not in spite of their flaws, but with them. This is not easy work, but it is sacred. Nietzsche didn't offer comfort. He offered fire. He spoke of the revaluation of all values, a total demolition of inherited morality to make room for the new. You are not here to live someone else's idea of goodness. You are here to become who you are. That will not be celebrated by everyone. You will lose approval. But you will gain something far more valuable: yourself. This journey is not a return to who you were before the world changed you. It is the birth of someone new, not the child who was wounded, not the mask you wore, but the self that is forged in the fire of truth. It begins with a choice: to stop hiding, to risk authenticity over acceptance, to say no when you mean no, to cry without apology, to dance without choreography, to speak even when your voice shakes, because only when you stop asking for permission do you begin to reclaim your power. And power, in this context, is not domination. It is presence. It is the ability to occupy your own life fully. You were never meant to live in fragments. You were meant to be whole. That is the radical act in a world that profits from your self-doubt. And this is not a one-time decision. It is a daily rebellion. Every moment you choose truth over performance, you crack the shell of shame. Bradshaw offers the tools: self-compassion, boundaries, emotional literacy, inner child work. Nietzsche offers the vision: a self beyond guilt, a life beyond fear, a spirit that says yes, not to perfection, but to vitality. Together, they point to the same revolution: becoming real. So, here is the invitation: not to fix yourself, but to unearth yourself, to question every inherited story, to grieve what you lost, and to build what was never given. You are not here to be good. You are here to be alive. And that changes everything. We will explore how these principles of emotional healing and philosophical liberation intersect to form a new model of identity. One not based on performance or approval, but rooted in freedom. We will uncover the tools to deconstruct the internal prisons. And more importantly, we will begin to build the foundation of a self that can withstand truth, carry joy, and hold complexity. This is not self-help. It is self-return. Let's now turn to the existential layer of shame, how it infiltrates your sense of meaning and your relationship with the world itself. Because shame, at its most dangerous, doesn't just make you feel bad about who you are. It makes you question whether you even deserve to exist. This is where philosophy becomes essential. When Jean-Paul Sartre described the feeling of being looked at as an object, of becoming aware of yourself through the gaze of others, he was describing what shame feels like. The internal collapse that happens when your sense of self is colonized by another's judgment. You begin to live externally, to view yourself from the outside in, and in doing so, you forget how to live from the inside out. You become a spectator of your own life. And this is the great rupture. The false self doesn't just silence the real self, it replaces it. Not because you chose it, but because the real self was never welcomed in the first place. To reclaim yourself, you have to reclaim your gaze. To look at yourself not with the eyes of a critic, but with the eyes of a creator. Not to judge, but to understand. Not to shrink, but to shape. This is where Viktor Frankl offers a powerful counterpoint. In the depths of suffering, he said, we still have the freedom to choose how we respond. Meaning is not given. It is made, even in pain, especially in pain. So if shame was built brick by brick, through years of small abandonments, then healing too can be built, moment by moment, through acts of radical self-regard. You don't have to believe in yourself completely to begin. You just have to stop abandoning yourself. That's where meaning begins, not in perfection, but in participation, in choosing to show up. We'll continue next by exploring how creativity, embodiment, and presence are not luxuries, but lifelines. Practices that ground you in your truth when shame tries to steal it. This next step is about not just who you are, but how you live. Let's talk embodiment. Not as an abstract idea, but as a physical reclamation of the self. Because shame isn't just psychological, it's somatic. It lives in the body. You feel it in your posture, in the way you shrink, the way you clench, the way you avoid taking up space. To heal, you must come home to your body. Start by breathing, deep, slow, intentional breaths. Let your body know that it is safe to feel, that it is allowed to exist without apology. Movement matters. Dance, walk, stretch, shake. Move in ways that feel like play, not performance. You are not here to impress. You are here to inhabit. Creativity, too, is an antidote. It bypasses the inner critic and lets the soul speak. Write, paint, sing, sculpt. Create not to be understood, but to understand yourself. In creativity, there is no right way, only your way. And that is where freedom begins. Let's now move into the arena of integration. Because healing is not just something you understand, it's something you embody, something you practice. It's not enough to know what shame is, or even where it came from. You have to live differently, and that means reclaiming the parts of your life shame tried to own. Start with your voice. If shame taught you to stay silent, reclaiming your voice isn't just therapeutic, it's revolutionary. Speak even when your voice trembles. Name your needs, set your boundaries, say what you actually mean. Because every honest word you speak rewrites the script shame wrote for you. Reclaim your choices. Shame thrives in autopilot. So begin to choose, deliberately. Choose what to wear, not based on what hides you, but what expresses you. Choose the book you want to read, the art you want to create, the rest you need. When you choose consciously, you break the spell of shame's numbness and reclaim your body. It is not a billboard for other people's standards. It is a living archive of your truth. Touch it with kindness. Nourish it with care. Move it with pleasure, not punishment. The more you live in your body, the less room there is for shame to rent. Integration is not a single act. It is a daily ritual. It is remembering again and again that you are allowed to take up space, that you are not a problem, that you are a process. Let's go deeper still. Existentialist thinkers like Søren Kierkegaard spoke of the leap of faith, a decision to live with integrity, even when the path is unclear. That's what healing from shame asks of you. Not certainty, but courage. Not a map, but movement. Albert Camus reminds us through the myth of Sisyphus that meaning isn't found, it's made. And the act of pushing the boulder day after day can become an act of defiance, of creation. When you live honestly in a world that thrives on illusion, you become that defiant figure. You become the artist of your own becoming. Simone de Beauvoir showed us that freedom is not something you possess. It is something you practice in relationship. Healing is not isolation. It's re-entering the world with your truth intact. It's looking someone in the eye and choosing not to shrink. It's speaking even when silence would be safer, and so you live, not to prove yourself, but to express yourself, not to please, but to create, not to conform, but to connect. Each act of self-expression is a blow against the empire of shame. Every honest conversation, every boundary you set, every time you rest without guilt, you are reclaiming sacred ground. Let's talk tools. Real, practical tools. Tool 1. Self-inquiry. Begin each day with a question. What would I do today if I believed I was enough? Let that question guide your choices. Let it undo the assumptions shame has trained you to accept. Tool 2. Micro-boundaries. These are not the dramatic ultimatums we see in movies. These are the small shifts. Saying, I need a minute. Saying, no, thank you. Saying, I'm not ready for that. Small, daily, powerful. Tool 3. Joy rituals. Shame says you don't deserve pleasure. Healing says joy is your birthright. So find one thing a day that brings you unearned joy. A song, a scent, a stretch, a smile. Protect it like sacred fire. Tool 4. Compassionate reflection. Each night, instead of replaying your failures, ask, where did I show up today? Where was I honest? Where did I try? Let that become your rhythm, not perfection, but participation. You see, shame isolates, it divides, but healing integrates, it connects. This is the quiet revolution, choosing wholeness in a world that prefers performance. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are rebuilding. So take this script, not just as something to hear, but something to live. Let it become a companion, a mirror, a spark. And when the shame returns, and it will, you'll meet it not with fear, but with familiarity. You'll say, I see you. I know your tricks, but I am not yours. Because you've done the work, because you are doing the work, because you are the work, not a project, but a poem, not a problem, but a presence, not a performance, but a person. This is your life, and it's time to live it. Now, let us take a final turn, a deeper descent into the well of self-realization, one that is not about recovering what you lost, but reimagining what you've yet to become. If the first part of this journey was about unmasking and naming shame, and the second about reclaiming and rebuilding the self, then this last act is about authorship. Not just living your truth, but writing it. Not just healing the wound, but redefining what it means to be whole. What does it mean to be whole in a fractured world? It means you stop waiting to be chosen, to be understood, to be granted permission. Instead, you begin. Begin to create the meaning you crave. Begin to define success on your terms. Begin to plant rituals of reverence in the ordinary moments of your life. Light a candle, not because someone told you to, but because you decided your evening deserves presence. Wear what makes you feel like a symphony. Speak words that heal instead of impress. Forgive yourself not to erase the past, but to reclaim your future. To be whole is to walk with the weight of your past and the wonder of your possibility. It's to no longer see your cracks as flaws, but as the entry points for light. Leonard Cohen once wrote, "There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." What he didn't say, but what you must know, is that light also gets out. Through those same cracks. Through your story, your voice, your presence. This is what it means to embody the truth. You are not just healing from shame. You are becoming a lighthouse for others who still live inside it. Every time you stand in your truth, you invite someone else to do the same. And yes, It can be lonely. To no longer perform. To say no. To walk away from what you once thought was safety. But there is another kind of loneliness. The one that comes from betraying yourself over and over again. And that you've lived long enough. So choose the honest loneliness. The one where you look in the mirror and finally recognize the person staring back. You will still feel fear. But fear is not the enemy. Fear is the signal that you're on sacred ground. Fear arises when something matters, when you matter. The real enemy is numbness, indifference, shrinking into roles you've outgrown. So stretch, outward, inward, deeper. Stretch into your integrity, into your bigness, into your contradictions, because you are allowed to be both tender and strong, both grieving and hopeful, both healing and unfinished. This is your permission slip, to weep without shame, to celebrate without justification, to speak without apology, to leave what no longer honors you, to return to what makes you come alive. We live in a world obsessed with finality, with resolutions. But your healing isn't a movie arc. It's a rhythm, a spiral, a song. Some days you'll rise with clarity. Other days you'll collapse in confusion. Both are holy. Both are you. The world taught you to hustle, to hide, to harden. But you are learning to slow, to soften, to stay. Stay here, with this breath, this moment, this version of you. And as you stay, life meets you. Grace meets you. Not because you earned it, but because it was always yours. Shame will try to return, dressed in familiar voices, but you'll recognize it now. You'll say, I see you, but I no longer serve you, and you will walk on, not toward perfection, but toward presence, not toward achievement, but toward alignment. You will not be everyone's favorite, but you will be your own, and that changes everything. So let this be the day you stop running. Let this be the season you root. Let this be the voice that rises, not to fit in, but to ring true. You are not what they called you, not what they demanded of you, not what they withheld from you. You are what you choose now. So choose peace, even when chaos calls. Choose rest, even when guilt whispers. Choose to be seen, even when hiding feels safer. This is how you rebuild a life, not in one leap, but in 1,000 returns to yourself, again and again, until your soul remembers its name, and you begin to live, not from the shadow of shame, but from the radiant center of who you truly are. This is not the end. This is the beginning, and you are ready. You always were. Let us now expand beyond the self, for wholeness is not just internal coherence, but how that self interfaces with the world. You do not exist in a vacuum. Your healing, your liberation, your courage, they ripple, they alter the collective field. So we must talk about community. Shame thrives in isolation. It festers in silence. But healing multiplies in connection. Not just any connection, but conscious, truth-based, vulnerability-embracing connection. If you were shamed in relationships, you will heal in relationships. But it begins with discernment. Not every space is safe. Not every ear deserves your truth. Part of healing is learning who can meet you, not with judgment, but with presence. Find those people. Even one is enough. Someone who doesn't flinch when you cry, who doesn't rush to fix you, who simply stays. And be that person for others. Because the moment you extend compassion to someone else, you reinforce the pathway of compassion within yourself. You become both healer and healed. We must also speak of culture. We live in systems designed to exploit insecurity. The economy thrives when you hate your body, your face, your income. Marketing is engineered to make you feel inadequate and then sell you the cure. To live free in this context is not apathy. It is activism. Every time you look in the mirror and choose love over loathing, you are resisting a billion-dollar industry. Every time you opt out of competition and choose collaboration, you are subverting a dominant narrative. This is about more than self-esteem. It is about systemic reprogramming. It is about becoming immune to the virus of never enough. And then there's legacy. You were shaped by those who came before you. Some passed on wounds, others passed on wisdom. And now, you get to choose what you carry forward. Will you pass down patterns of silence or scripts of truth? Will you model performance or presence? Your healing is not just for you. It is for those around you, for those who will come after. You are the turning point in a lineage that may have forgotten its worth. Remember it. And as we deepen this return, let's talk about the body as a compass, a truth teller, a map. Because healing doesn't just happen in thoughts. It happens in cells, in rhythms, in stillness. Your body remembers what your mind forgot. It holds the key. So listen. When your chest tightens, ask what boundary is being crossed. When your stomach knots, ask what truth is being denied. When your shoulders ache, ask what burden is not yours to carry. And when you find those answers, respond. Not with judgment, but with adjustment. Let your body lead you back to alignment. This is the wisdom no textbook can teach. It is earned through embodiment, through breath, through presence. Let's now revisit power, not the hierarchical, oppressive version, but authentic, grounded, life-affirming power. Power is knowing who you are and refusing to abandon that knowing, even when it's inconvenient. Power is standing your ground, not to dominate, but to anchor. It's a power that doesn't need applause. It doesn't seek to be better than. It seeks to be fully itself. You access it not through control, but through clarity. Ask yourself daily, where am I compromising truth for approval? Where am I making myself smaller for someone else's comfort? And then choose differently, even in small ways, especially in small ways. You may not change the world overnight, but you can shift your world in a heartbeat. Power is presence. Power is peace. Power is the ability to live in alignment, even when the winds of expectation blow hard. Now, let's touch on grief. Because to reclaim yourself, you must grieve who you pretended to be. You must mourn the years lost to performance. The versions of you built from fear. The love you chased that was never real. Grief is not a detour. It is the path. It is what clears the soil so something real can grow. Cry, rage, write letters to your past self. Let it out, not to stay in the wound, but to water your becoming. This grief is sacred. It is proof that you are awake, that you are no longer sleepwalking through life, that you want more, and you are becoming more. Finally, let's look ahead. What kind of life do you want to build now that the lie of shame no longer rules you? Not a perfect life, a present life. Not a scripted one, an honest one. A life where your days are not dictated by fear, but by curiosity. Where your relationships are not held together by roles, but by truth. Where your dreams are not censored by shame, but shaped by possibility. Write this vision down. Speak it aloud. Let your nervous system memorize the sound of freedom. And know this, you will falter, you will forget, and you will return. That's what practice is. And every time you return, the false self loses another piece of ground. And the real you, the you beneath the shame, steps forward with a little more certainty. That is the revolution. A quiet, powerful, patient revolution. One breath at a time, one truth at a time. Until the day comes when you wake up, look in the mirror, and meet someone you not only recognize, but respect. That day is coming. Keep going. You're almost home. And now, the final word. You have walked through the landscape of shame, seen its hidden architecture, touched its roots in childhood, in culture, in silence. You've unearthed the lies, faced the mask, and dared to feel what you were once told to bury. But let this be the moment you stop looking at yourself as broken. You were never broken. You were buried. Buried under expectation, under survival, under silence. And now, with every breath, you are uncovering. That uncovering is the rebirth of the true self. Not perfect, but present. Not flawless, but free. Not fearless, but fiercely honest. This is your life's most sacred work, to return to yourself, to stand in the mirror and say, I will no longer abandon you. That is your revolution. And when the world tries to hand you shame again, as it will, you'll hold it in your palm, look it in the eye, and say, not today, not anymore. You are not the wound. You are the healing. You are not the lie. You are the voice that tells the truth. So go. Live as if your existence is a protest against shame, because it is. And that, your living, breathing, embodied truth, is what changes everything.